How could you be so selfish? My father's voice thundered through the open-beamed ceiling of the Hill Country Lake House, echoing off polished stone and Spanish tile. His face flushed a furious red as he paced the room in his socks, fists clenched at his sides like a man betrayed. Your sister needs that money for her business, Elena. You've got more than enough. Why would you hold back now? I stood frozen beside the fireplace, still holding the property tax bill I'd been ambushed with. Just moments ago, I'd thought we were having a casual Sunday dinner, but somehow this evening, this supposedly peaceful gathering had morphed into a tribunal, and I was the defendant. My mother sat on the far end of the long leather sectional eyes, locked on her folded hands, refusing to look up. Her silence spoke volumes, not surprise, not concern, just passive complicity. That cut deeper than anything my father was yelling. "Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though I could feel the heat climbing up my neck. "I've been covering this house's property taxes for 5 years. I paid for Jenna's car. I covered the roof replacement last year. I even covered Mom's knee surgery when insurance denied part of the claim. I never asked for anything back." He didn't even blink. "We gave you everything growing up," he barked, brushing my words aside like lint. "And now when we need you, you're abandoning us, while your sister is trying to build something with her life." I felt something shift in me, a knot tightening. That's when I saw it. Tucked beneath a copy of Hill Country Monthly on the coffee table, an envelope ivory-colored and slightly crumpled. My name wasn't on it, but Jenna's was. Jenna Shaw. Trust agreement. Just that quick, the knot turned into something sharper. I reached for it faster than I expected myself to move. My father lurched toward me too late. "Elena, that's private," he snapped. But I was already scanning the contents, legal boilerplate page after page, until the numbers jumped out at me. My eyes stopped on them like hitting a wall. $350, $1,000. A trust fund, fully funded, for Jenna, set up over 3 years ago with recurring annual contributions. For years, I had been told the family was stretched thin, that they couldn't help with my college tuition, that they couldn't spare funds when my first apartment flooded and I needed help with the deposit for a new place, that Jenna needed more help because she wasn't as independent. Yet they were building her a nest egg behind my back while treating me like their personal bank. "When were you planning to tell me?" I asked quietly. My voice didn't crack. It went flat, ice cold. My father didn't answer, just snatched the envelope back and shoved it into the magazine stack like it could somehow erase what I'd seen. But it was too late. The truth was burned into my memory along with every sacrifice I'd ever made, thinking it was mutual. Guess that explains why my student loan payments weren't important. I added more to myself than him. I saw my mother finally look up just for a second, but her expression was unreadable. "I thought you didn't need help," she said softly. "You've always been the strong one, Elena." And there it was, the line I'd heard my whole life. You're strong. Jenna's still finding her way. She got a brand new Volkswagen at 16. I got to take the city bus in triple-digit heat while juggling after-school jobs. She got into an expensive private university with no debt. I taught myself to trade stocks at night after working 8-hour shifts at a coffee shop, and somehow, I never questioned it, until now. "Strong doesn't mean disposable," I said. My father, clearly uncomfortable, reached for a new tactic. He slid the tax bill across the coffee table toward me like that was the real topic. "The taxes are due in 3 weeks," he said, and the HOA increased their annual fees. I stared at the bill, $9,450. After what I just discovered, he still expected me to pay. Something in me snapped, but not in the way I imagined. Not a scream, not even a tear, just a quiet seismic shift like the fault line beneath our family had finally cracked open. "I'll take care of it," I said calmly. His shoulders relaxed instantly. He missed it, the resolve that had taken root in my voice. But I heard it, and I wasn't done. Back in my high-rise apartment in downtown Austin, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call a friend to vent. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up a folder I'd quietly maintained for years, one I never thought I'd need. Family contributions. Do not delete inside were neatly labeled subfolders: property taxes, Jenna's car, medical bills, lake house repairs, vacation expenses. I'd built this digital archive out of habit, a leftover discipline from my day trading mindset. Every dollar mattered. Every transaction was logged, time-stamped, and stored. What began as casual bookkeeping had quietly grown into a mountain of evidence, and now it was all sitting in front of me. 5 years. $118.745. I went line by line checking for anything I missed. 5 years of property taxes, $46, $200. Jenna's car payments and insurance, $11, $168. The roof replacement on the lake house, $12,000. Mom's uncovered knee surgery expenses, $8, $200. Family gifts. I paid for vacations, holidays, surprise birthdays, $22, $400. Miscellaneous, $18,797. And that wasn't even including the $14,915 I'd calculated as lost investment growth money I could have multiplied in my portfolio had I kept it invested instead of redirecting it to my family's needs. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the total. $133 or $660. My stomach turned. While I worked 12-hour days trading volatile markets, they'd set up a $350K safety net for Jenna and still had the audacity to ask me for more. My phone buzzed. Dad, let us know when you've taken care of the taxes. Jenna. Don't be dramatic, Elena. The family needs you. You always said you were proud to help. Proud. Is that what they thought? That I felt honored to bankroll their choices while I was told there wasn't enough for me? That night, I slept 3 hours. I woke up before sunrise and drove across town to the Westlake office of Joseph Klein, my financial advisor, the man who helped me turn my modest savings into a thriving portfolio. When I showed him the spreadsheet, his eyes widened. "You never asked them to pay any of this back?" he asked, leaning forward. "No," I said. "They're my family." Joseph folded his hands, his tone gentle but firm. "Elena, you've been more than generous. But this isn't generosity anymore. It's sacrifice. And not the healthy kind." I nodded. "I know. I just found out they've been building a 6-figure trust fund for Jenna this whole time." Joseph's jaw tensed. "That changes everything. We built a plan. It started with proper documentation, then notarized statements verifying my contributions." Joseph looped in a colleague, Victor Hernandez, a forensic accountant who specialized in family financial disputes. "Are you sure you want to go this far?" Joseph asked as we wrapped up. "Yes," I said, the words firm in my mouth. "They need to understand what happens when I stop paying." 2 days later, I sat across from Victor, handing over statements, receipts, screenshots, bank logs. "This is some of the most detailed documentation I've ever seen," Victor remarked, organizing the paperwork into neat stacks. "You've basically built your own audit trail." I gave a humorless smile. "Welcome to being a day trader. We don't gamble. We track everything." After 2 hours, Victor leaned back and pushed a clean sheet of paper toward me. Total contributions, $118,745 plus a lost investment growth, $14,936.60. The betrayal wasn't emotional anymore, it was mathematical, concrete. And now I asked. "That depends," Victor replied. "Do you want legal restitution or leverage?" "Just leverage," I said, "for now." Later that night, I received another round of messages. "Dad taxes still unpaid. It's getting close. Jenna. Seriously. Elena. You're just going to leave us hanging?" I didn't respond. Let them twist. Let them wonder. This time, silence was power. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through my apartment blinds, I brewed my coffee, sat at my desk, and started undoing 5 years of invisible labor. Click. Canceled Jenna's monthly car payment auto draft. Click. Removed my name from the automatic tax payment portal for the lake house. Click. Closed shared utility account I'd been quietly covering since Dad forgot to pay it one summer. Then came the biggest shift. I opened my trading dashboard and moved $120 million, the amount I'd effectively donated to my family, into a new fund. I labeled it my future. 3 words: quiet, defiant, sacred. My phone pinged halfway through. Jenna again. Jenna. What the hell, Elena? The bank says my car payment bounced. Are you trying to ruin my credit? Dad's furious. Fix this. A minute later, Dad, we need to talk. This behavior is unacceptable. You can't just abandon your responsibilities to this family. Responsibilities, as if I'd signed a contract the day I turned 18 to carry their weight forever. I powered my phone off and finished transferring my accounts, putting up digital walls they couldn't climb. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel when it came to my family: peace. But it didn't last long. By noon, my phone now back on lit up like Times Square. Calls, voicemails, unread texts piling up by the minute. Mom's voicemail came in shaky. Elena, please. Your father is beside himself. The property tax notice just came in with a late fee warning. Jenna can't make her car payment. What's going on? Please call us. No mention of the trust fund, no recognition of what I'd already paid. Just panic that their ATM had run dry. Then came the knock at the gate. My intercom buzzed my building's security guard. Ms. Shaw, your father is here. He's demanding to speak with you. He's quite insistent. I froze. Tell him I'm not available, I said. He says he won't leave until you come down. I sighed. Then call the police. Understood. 20 minutes later, a text from an unknown number popped up. Thomas Cousin. Just saw Uncle Greg being escorted out of your building. You okay? I blinked. Thomas and I hadn't spoken in months. Me, I'm fine. Just a family financial disagreement. Thomas. About time you stood up to them. The way they've treated you versus Jenna. Everyone's noticed. Everyone's noticed. I stared at the message. The truth was heavier than I expected. I wasn't just imagining it. I wasn't being petty or selfish. Even from the outside, the favoritism was visible. That evening, the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. Jenna. Crossed arms, pacing, foot tapping like I'd stolen her weekend plans. I opened the door, but left the security chain locked. What do you want, Jenna? She narrowed her eyes. I want to know why you're suddenly acting like a psycho. My car payment bounced. Dad says you're refusing to pay the lake house taxes. I raised an eyebrow. Correct. Why? She snapped. What's your problem? My problem, I said calmly, is that I've paid over $118,000 to this family while Dad secretly built you a $350,000 trust fund. Her expression faltered. Shock. Then guilt. Then anger. That's different, she said too quickly. The trust is for my future. I need that security. And I don't. You've always had it together, she said, as if that was some kind of sin. You're the smart one. I'm still figuring things out. You're 31, I said flatly, and I've been paying for your car, your vacations, and our parents' house. I didn't know I was financing your lifestyle while Dad set you up for life. You never complained before, she muttered, because I didn't know I snapped. I didn't know I was being lied to. She hesitated, then softened. Look, Elena, I get that you're upset, but we're family. Dad says if we don't pay the taxes, we might lose the lake house. I stared at her. That's not my problem anymore. Maybe he can use some of your trust fund. Her face turned to stone. That's not fair. I smiled sadly. No, Jenna, nothing about this has ever been fair. And then quietly, I closed the door. 2 weeks passed. 2 full weeks of silence from my parents. No texts, no calls, no surprise visits. But I wasn't fooled. The property tax deadline came and went. I saw the late fees update on the county portal. I bookmarked it out of habit, then reminded myself not to care. I poured my energy into work instead. Markets were volatile, but in a way that I loved, chaotic yet navigable. My focus sharpened without the background noise of guilt and manipulation. Joseph, my financial advisor, had helped me restructure my entire portfolio now that I wasn't bleeding cash for everyone else. For the first time in years, I was able to increase my retirement contributions and start planning for something just for me, maybe even a small lake cottage of my own, somewhere far from hill country. A place where the silence meant serenity, not weaponized guilt. Then an email from Uncle Pete landed in my inbox. Subject line, Greg and the lake house. What's going on? Elena, Greg just asked me for a $10,000 loan to help cover taxes and late penalties. He said you're refusing to support the family anymore. This doesn't sound like the you I know. Is everything okay? I stared at the message. So now Dad was panhandling the extended family for handouts while still refusing to dip into Jenna's trust fund. I took a breath and did something bold. I attached a PDF of my financial contributions, the receipts, the total, the trust fund revelation, and a brief but calm explanation. For 5 years, I quietly carried the financial burden of our family while Dad secretly built a $350,000 trust fund for Jenna. I recently decided to step back. These documents will explain why. Uncle Pete's reply came in under an hour. Holy hell, Elena. I had no idea. None of us did. Greg's been telling everyone he's doing everything equally for both of you. This changes everything. The next morning, my phone rang. Thomas, my cousin. Elena, he said. I need to tell you something. What's going on? There's a family meeting this weekend, he said quietly. At your parents' house. My heart sank. Dad's trying to rally everyone against you, he added. Says you've abandoned the family. He's planning to guilt you into covering the back taxes and then some. Of course he is, I said dryly. There's more, Thomas continued. He's spinning this story like you're trying to sabotage the family legacy, like the lake house is under threat because you're being vindictive. The audacity was breathtaking, but not surprising. Are you going? I asked. Yes. And so are you, he said firmly. You need to set the record straight. I'll back you up. I hesitated. The thought of standing in that room facing my father, Jenna, and everyone they'd lied to made my stomach twist. But the alternative, letting the lie become the family truth. No, not this time. I'll be there, I said. Saturday came faster than I expected. I dressed deliberately, black pantsuit, minimal makeup, clean hair pulled back. I needed to look like exactly what I was prepared, professional and done being used. In my briefcase, the complete documentation from Victor Hernandez, notarized statements, the final financial tally, the calculated loss of investment growth, everything down to the penny. As I pulled into the long gravel driveway of my parents' hill country house, my heart pounded, but not from fear, from clarity. This time, I wasn't walking in to explain myself. I was walking in to expose the truth. I stepped inside without knocking. The living room was full uncles, aunts, cousins. Jenna perched on the couch beside my mother, arms folded. My father stood by the fireplace, clearly mid-rant. He stopped when he saw me. Elena, he said, smoothing his shirt as if he hadn't just been throwing me under the bus. Glad you're here. We were just discussing the family vacation home situation. I'm sure you were, I replied calmly, placing my briefcase on the coffee table. And I'm sure you've shared all the relevant financial information with everyone. A murmur rolled through the room. Dad's eyes narrowed. We're discussing your refusal to meet your responsibilities. Interesting, I cut in, because I have 5 years of records showing over $118,000 in responsibilities I've already met. All while you set aside $350,000 for Jenna, privately. The room fell silent. Aunt Carla leaned forward. Wait. What trust fund? I turned to my father. Care to explain? I asked. He said nothing. So I passed out the summary sheets, one to every relative in the room. This is a verified breakdown of everything I've paid for since 2018. Property taxes, car payments, medical bills, family trips. You'll also see the trust fund document I wasn't meant to find. Shock, confusion, growing outrage. Jenna's face went pale. Uncle Pete stood. Greg, is this true? My father's jaw clenched. These are private family matters. And that Uncle Pete snapped is exactly the problem. You treat one daughter like a wallet and the other like a legacy. Aunt Carla nodded. This isn't just wrong, it's abusive. The room erupted into overlapping voices, accusations, questions, defenses. I didn't speak again. I didn't need to. For the first time, the silence wasn't mine. It was his. And buried in his glare, beneath the fury, I saw something else. Not remorse, not shame, fear. Fear that the story he'd crafted for years was finally unraveling. And underneath that, the smallest flicker of something I never thought I'd see in my father's eyes when he looked at me. Respect. The meeting at my parents' house ended the way a storm does, loud, messy, and with damage you can't fully see until long after it's over. My father stormed out first, face red and jaw locked. My mother trailed behind him, offering weak apologies to no one in particular. Jenna stayed frozen on the couch, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. The rest of the family lingered, stunned by what they'd just learned. Aunt Carla shook her head as she flipped through the summary I'd provided. I had no idea it was this bad, she murmured. Greg always made it sound like you were the one with no empathy. Uncle Pete nodded grimly. If you've been covering all that, you should have a stake in that house. No question. I waved a hand gently. I don't want the house. I just want them to see it wasn't fair. Thomas, steady, kind Thomas, put a hand on my shoulder. Recognition isn't enough, Elena. There should be consequences. I didn't respond then, but I knew he was right. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. Not with a call, not with a voicemail. A simple text from my father. The property taxes are due. No greeting, no apology, no mention of the family meeting or the documents that had detonated his credibility. Just the same old demand. That evening, I got a call from my mother. Elena, she said softly, your father isn't handling this well. I could almost laugh. You mean he's not used to being held accountable? Her voice hesitated. The lake house. It means everything to him. More than treating his daughters equally. The silence on her end was painful. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Mom, I've contributed almost $120,000 to this family, I continued. And Dad set up a $350,000 trust for Jenna without ever offering me a fraction of that kind of support. That's not just favoritism. That's a pattern. I know, she whispered. I've always known. But your father makes the financial decisions, and I'm supposed to just accept them. I'm not doing this anymore. The next morning, I texted my father back, but not with words, with a photo. A clear, sharp image of the notarized financial statement from Victor Hernandez. The total $133,660 are circled in red. No message, no emotion, just math. An hour later, my phone rang. I expected Dad, but it was Jenna. Elena, she said, voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Is it really that much? Yes, I said. Every penny documented, every transfer, every receipt. I didn't know, she said quietly. Dad always said you helped out here and there. He made it sound like, you just had extra money. A pause. Then her voice cracked. I feel sick. It's not entirely your fault, I said honestly, but you benefited from it. I did, she admitted, and I never questioned it. I just assumed I deserved it. Another long pause. Then something I never saw coming. I'm going to fix this, Jenna said. It's not right. Before I could ask what she meant, she hung up. The next day, a formal envelope arrived via certified mail from my father's attorney. Inside were 2 documents. The first, confirmation that the property taxes on the lake house had been paid in full. The second, a legally binding amendment to the house's ownership deed. I now own 25% of the lake house. Attached was a note from the attorney brief, and clinical at Ms. Jenna Shaw's request funds from her trust were used to cover the outstanding taxes and legal transfer fees. Ownership update effective immediately. My phone buzzed with a new text. Dad. This wasn't necessary. Family helps family. I stared at the message. Even after everything, he still didn't get it. He still believed I existed to help. That giving wasn't something I chose, it was something expected. Another ping. Mom, your father is struggling with this, but I want you to know I'm proud of you. I should have stood up for myself years ago. And then the final message. Jenna, I've asked Dad to split the trust fund between us. He said no at first. But Uncle Pete and Aunt Carla backed me up. He's meeting with the financial advisor tomorrow. I sat down, phone in hand, the weight of it finally hitting me. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about fairness, respect, truth. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt all three. Final message to viewers. Have you ever been the one expected to carry everything simply because you could handle it? Share your story below. How did you rise above the betrayal? And if this story made you feel seen, like, comment, and subscribe. Because sometimes the quiet one is the one who ends it all with a single word: no. The following weekend, I did something small but monumental. I drove out to a quiet spot on Lake Travis, far from the drama of our family lake house, and toured a modest 2-bedroom cottage listed for sale. Cedar siding, wraparound porch, a little garden out back where wildflowers fought to reclaim the soil. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. It could be mine. As the realtor chatted beside me, describing the lake's seasonal charm, I found myself tuning out. Not because I wasn't listening, but because my mind kept drifting to a different sound. Silence. A silence not born of tension or manipulation, but of peace, of freedom. I wasn't escaping the family anymore. I was choosing me. When I returned to Austin that evening, my phone buzzed. Jenna. Dad met with the financial advisor today. He agreed to restructure the trust. We're each getting $175,000. Uncle Pete made sure it's binding. I blinked. I didn't know what stunned me more, that my father agreed or that Jenna pushed that hard for it. You didn't have to do that, I texted back. Yes, I did, she replied. You shouldn't have had to carry this family alone. I was wrong. So was Dad. You gave us everything. It's time you got to keep something for yourself. That night, I walked to my balcony, looked out over the city skyline, and let the wind hit my face. For years, I'd been conditioned to think love meant sacrifice. That being dependable meant being invisible. That being strong meant being silent. But none of that was true, because when I stopped carrying the weight, everything shifted. Jenna stopped leaning. My mother started speaking. And my father, well, for once he listened. He didn't apologize. Not fully, but sometimes actions speak louder than words, and a notarized document splitting a 6-figure trust fund evenly, that was a start. A week later, I received an official packet in the mail, final confirmation of my 25% ownership of the lake house. Attached was a simple note from Jenna, handwritten in neat loops. We spent summers there. I want you to be part of its future, not just its past. Thank you for opening our eyes. Love, Jay. I folded the note carefully and tucked it into a drawer I once reserved for bills and overdue obligations. Now it held only one thing: proof that silence doesn't mean surrender, and family doesn't mean unquestioned loyalty. It means reciprocity. It means respect. It means, if nothing else, finally being seen. Have you ever realized your silence was enabling someone else's entitlement? Tell me below what made you finally say enough. Share your story. Like if you've ever been underestimated. Subscribe for more true stories of quiet strength turned unstoppable power. Because the most powerful word in any language is the one that finally sets you free. She deserves it more, honey. Mom said, not even looking up from the stack of gourmet cupcakes she was arranging on a tiered display stand. Jessica's always been more dedicated to her studies. You've always had other interests. The words landed like a slap I hadn't braced for. I stood there, still in my scrubs, my medical school diploma barely a week old, framed and fresh, trying to process what I'd just heard. Mom? We both graduated with honors, I said quietly. We had the exact same GPA. My voice didn't waver, but my hands were trembling. Audrey. she sighed, finally glancing up with that same cool look I'd grown up with. Your sister doesn't have a wealthy mentor like Dr. Flemington taking an interest in her future. You've had advantages Jessica didn't. I almost laughed. Not out of humor, out of disbelief. Dr. Vivian Fleming wasn't some trust fund savior. She was my research advisor, and I'd earned her mentorship through 2 years of 80-hour weeks in the lab while Jessica was skiing in Aspen with our parents. My advantage, working myself to exhaustion, while Jessica had every emotional and financial resource handed to her on a sterling platter. So I'm being punished for finding my own opportunities? I asked, my tone calm too calm. Behind me, Dad stepped into the kitchen, placing a comforting hand on Mom's shoulder. No one's punishing you, Audrey, he said with his usual dismissive calm. We're just being practical. Jessica needs more help. You've always been more resourceful. Resourceful. That word. The same word they'd used when they skipped my undergrad research symposium to fly cross-country for one of Jessica's volleyball tournaments. The same word they used when Jessica got a new Volkswagen on her 21st birthday, and I got a $50 Shell gas card. Tomorrow was Jessica's debt-free celebration party, a rooftop soiree in downtown Detroit. Classy, extravagant, undoubtedly expensive, funded entirely by our parents. They'd invited the entire extended family, our med school faculty, even the dean. The invitation read, "Celebrating Dr. Jessica Collins, debt-free and destined for greatness." No mention of me. No acknowledgement that we'd crossed the same finish line. I grabbed my bag. I've got an early shift tomorrow at the hospital. Mom's voice chased me as I walked toward the door. Will you still make it to Jessica's party? Not for me, not out of concern. Out of fear, I'd make Jessica's moment less perfect. I'll be there, I said, even as the thought made my stomach twist. As I slid into my car, my phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Fleming Need to speak urgently about the Patterson Fellowship. Big news. My heart skipped. For weeks, I'd waited to hear back about the most competitive neurosurgical research fellowship in the country, Johns Hopkins. Only one graduating student nationwide would get it. Was this it? I stared at the message, and in that quiet moment, sitting alone in my car, headlights glowing against our suburban driveway, I realized something chilling. My parents' favoritism wasn't just unfair. It was about to become publicly humiliating. And there was absolutely nothing I could do to stop what came next. But I had no idea just how far it would go. The next day came faster than I expected. The morning sunlight felt sharper, more judgmental, like even nature was bracing for the evening ahead. I arrived at Dr. Fleming's office just after 10 a.m., nerves twisting in my chest. Her door was already open. "Audrey," she said, standing that familiar spark in her steely blue eyes. "Sit, I have extraordinary news." My heart hammered. The committee made their decision on the Patterson Fellowship. I held my breath. "They've selected you." The words hit like lightning. I blinked. "Congratulations, Dr. Audrey Collins, you're going to Baltimore." Joy, disbelief, validation. It all crashed over me in a wave so intense I forgot how to speak. Dr. Fleming smiled. "You earned this," she said firmly. "Your research on neurovascular regeneration after traumatic injury was groundbreaking. The committee was especially impressed by your dual method approach, combining surgical innovation with pharmacological treatment. That kind of insight doesn't come from textbooks, Audrey. That comes from you." The fellowship came with everything housing stipend, full salary, and total loan forgiveness. I would be debt-free, just like Jessica, but through my work, my mind. There's more. Dr. Fleming continued, her tone shifting slightly. "I've been invited to Jessica's celebration tonight. Your parents extended the invitation to faculty." My heart sank. "I'd like to announce your fellowship news there if you're comfortable with that." I froze. My gut clenched. "I don't know," I admitted. "It's Jessica's night. My parents might see it as me trying to steal her spotlight." Dr. Fleming tilted her head, a faint frown on her lips. "Audrey," she said, her voice firmer now, I've seen how your parents speak about you, how they've minimized your accomplishments and inflated your sisters. This recognition, it needs to be heard. And sometimes the only way for something to be acknowledged is for it to be public. I swallowed hard. She was right. If my parents found out in private, they'd downplay it, reframe it as a fluke, a lucky break. Okay, I said softly. You can announce it. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed again. Jessica, Mom's going overboard for tonight. It's embarrassing. Wish she put this much effort into celebrating both of us. See you there, Har. I blinked. Jessica. Acknowledging the imbalance, that was a first. Before I could reply, another message lit up the screen. Mom, don't forget business casual tonight. And please let your sister have her moment. This is very important to her. The contrast made my stomach flip. Maybe Jessica had noticed. Maybe she'd just never said anything. Maybe tonight. The lines we'd drawn between us since childhood were finally starting to blur. Maybe. But nothing could have prepared me for what that party would reveal. Because some truths don't whisper. They shatter everything. And that night, something was about to break. Jessica's debt-free celebration was held at one of those rooftop restaurants in downtown Detroit that smelled like money. The kind of place where champagne flowed like water, and everything from the lighting to the linen was curated for Instagram perfection. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out into a terrace, lit with soft golds and blues, summer twilight hanging low over the skyline. A massive banner read, "Congratulations, Dr. Jessica Collins." No mention of me. There were framed photos of her journey: Jessica at her white coat ceremony, Jessica at match day, Jessica holding up her acceptance letter to Michigan Med. In a few group shots I appeared, fuzzy background decoration. I smoothed down my navy dress, took a breath, and stepped into the fray. Audrey. Jessica spotted me immediately breaking away from a group of family, friends, and relatives. She looked gorgeous in a silver cocktail dress, her blonde bob catching the terrace lights just right. "Thank God you're here," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Aunt Patty's already asked me 5 times if I have a boyfriend. You might need to fake date someone before dessert." I laughed, relieved, confused. This didn't feel like a rivalry, not with her, not right now. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That I'm married to medicine. But if she knows any single neurosurgeons, I'm open to referrals." We laughed again. For a moment, we were just sisters. Then our mother appeared. "Jessica, the Hendersons just arrived," she said, glass of champagne in hand. "You remember Thomas Henderson, chief of surgery at Cleveland Memorial? You should come say hello." She took Jessica's arm, steering her away, then turned back to me briefly. "Audrey, would you mind checking if the caterers have set out the gluten-free desserts? Your cousin Beth is on one of her diet kicks again." And just like that, I was the help. By the time I returned to the terrace, Jessica was being paraded in front of hospital administrators and former professors like she was the next coming of Florence Nightingale. I drifted to the edge of the event, sipping water and pretending to be invisible. That's when I saw Dr. Fleming. She looked stunning in a crimson pantsuit, gliding through the room like she owned it. She found me immediately. "Audrey," she said, pulling me into a hug, "ready for the announcement." "Honestly," I whispered, "it feels complicated." She surveyed the room, the banners, the cake, the slideshow. "More complicated than I realized," she murmured. Across the rooftop, I saw my parents introducing Jessica to Dr. Margaret Wu, the chief of neurosurgery at Detroit Medical Center, one of the hospitals I'd applied to for residency. My gut twisted. Were they trying to hand Jessica my spot? Dr. Fleming noticed. Before I could react, my father spotted her and came over Jessica and my mother in tow. "Dr. Fleming," he said, smiling wide. "So thrilled you could join us. I understand you've worked with Audrey on something." Dr. Fleming's eyebrow arched slow and deliberate. "Audrey has been my primary research partner for the last 2 years, she said coolly. "Her work on pediatric brain injuries was integral to our study's success." My parents' faces twitched just slightly. "Well, that's very nice," my mother said. Jessica's also done neurosurgical research. In fact, Dr. Wu was just saying how impressed she is with Jessica's residency application. I blinked. Jessica hadn't done neurosurgical research. Her focus was neuropsychiatry. My parents were lying right to a top program director's face. Dr. Fleming smiled, but there was steel in her voice. That's surprising. I was under the impression Jessica's interests were clinical psychiatry, not surgical interventions. Silence, thick, awkward. I looked at Jessica. She wasn't gloating. She looked uncomfortable. Something in the room had shifted, and the truth. The spotlight wasn't Jessica's anymore. It was mine, but I hadn't even begun to realize how big that spotlight was about to get. Dinner had begun. The guests were seated at long candlelit tables on the rooftop terrace. My parents were at the head table, of course, flanked by Jessica, our grandparents, and Dr. Wu. I was placed 3 tables down, next to Cousin Beth and her boyfriend of the month, surrounded by distant relatives who barely remembered my name, close enough to hear my father's booming voice, too far to be part of the conversation. We always knew Jessica was destined for greatness, he was saying to Dr. Wu, even when they were little. Jessica was our ambitious one, driven, focused. Every word was a scalpel, precise, deliberate. I stared down at my plate, appetite gone. Across the room, Dr. Fleming met my eyes. She gave me the faintest nod, reassurance or permission. The silverware clinked. The breeze swirled softly over the city lights, and then my father stood up, tapping his glass. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate our daughter Jessica's remarkable achievement," he began. "As many of you know, medical school is a grueling journey. To emerge not only with a degree but debt-free is truly special." Applause, light, polite, empty. Then my mother stood. "We've always believed in investing in our daughter's future. Jessica has made us proud every step of the way." That word again, invested, as if their love came with receipts. I felt the pressure building in my chest, grief, rage, years of silence swelling like a storm behind my ribs. And then Jessica stood up. "Actually," she said, voice surprisingly steady, "I'd like to say something." Every head turned. Even I looked up in shock. "This celebration feels incomplete," she said, scanning the crowd landing on me. "Audrey and I both graduated. We had identical GPAs. We both worked hard, but honestly, Audrey worked harder." The rooftop went still, not quiet, frozen. My parents stiffened. My mother's mouth opened slightly. "Jessica," she hissed. "No, Mom, it's the truth." Jessica's voice didn't waver. "Audrey did it without the kind of support I had. She worked jobs. She built relationships. She earned every inch of her success without being handed anything." The silence was seismic. Then my father chuckled too loud. "Of course we're proud of both our girls," he said, his tone straining. "Audrey has done well too, but tonight is about celebrating Jessica being debt-free, which is, well, a very specific achievement." Jessica turned to him. "An achievement you and Mom paid for, not one I earned." My breath caught. Then Dr. Fleming stood up, graceful, commanding. "If I may," she said, and the entire terrace turned toward her. "This feels like an appropriate time to share some news about Audrey Collins." My parents turned pale. Audrey's groundbreaking research in neurovascular regeneration has earned her the Patterson Fellowship at Johns Hopkins. Gasps. A few outright woes. Someone even clapped prematurely. "For those unfamiliar," she continued, "this is the most competitive research fellowship in the country. One position, one student, nationwide." Eyes turned to me. The committee cited Audrey's independent dual-method innovation as revolutionary. She achieved this while managing a full clinical load and mentoring younger students. Her insight, her leadership, and her stamina are extraordinary. I heard murmurs ripple through the crowd. Recognition, respect. For me. Dr. Fleming smiled, then added, "Additionally, our department has approved a full scholarship award to retroactively cover Audrey's remaining medical school loans in recognition of her unparalleled contributions." I was debt-free, just like Jessica, only I'd earned every cent of it. Applause broke out, louder this time, sustained. People I hadn't spoken to in years were craning their necks to see me, smiling, nodding. Whispers of "that's her" echoing around the terrace. My parents sat like statues, drained, silent. Jessica came to my side, her champagne glass raised. "To my sister," she said, clinking gently against mine. "Patterson Fellow, freaking Johns Hopkins. Why didn't you tell me?" I smiled faintly. "I only found out this morning, and I didn't want to overshadow your night." She frowned. "This ridiculous party was never my idea. I told them it was over the top and unfair. But you know how they are once they've decided something." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years I didn't see the golden child. I saw my sister. "You did?" I asked softly. "Of course I did," she said, eyes flashing. "Audrey, I've always seen it. I just didn't know how to speak up without tearing things apart." I stared at her stunned, and that's when Dr. Wu walked up. "Dr. Collins," she said, smiling at me, "I was very impressed by Dr. Fleming's remarks. If you ever decide to bring your work to Detroit instead of Johns Hopkins, please know our neurosurgery department would be honored to have you." Before I could stammer a response, Jessica jumped in. "Thank you, Dr. Wu," she said proudly, arm around me. "But I'm afraid she's already locked in for greatness, though if she ever decides to revolutionize a second hospital, we'll let you know." Dr. Wu laughed and nodded. "Keep us in mind, both of you." As she walked away, I turned to Jessica. "You didn't have to do that. You want to stay in Detroit." "I still can," she interrupted, "but not like this. Not by stepping on your shoulders or letting Mom and Dad stack the deck. That's not who I want to be." Across the terrace, I saw our parents finally rise from their table. They looked lost, and for once they were the ones pushing through the crowd to reach me. But they were already too late. They approached cautiously like guests at a funeral they weren't sure they should attend. Dad adjusted his collar. Mom clutched her champagne flute like a lifeline. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes. "Dr. Fleming certainly had some impressive things to say about you," my father began. His voice was tight, like he was struggling to hold on to control. "The Patterson Fellowship, that's quite the honor." My mother nodded quickly. "Why didn't you tell us you were even being considered?" she asked, the tone almost accusatory. "You never mentioned it." I tilted my head, watching them both. "Would it have mattered?" I asked softly. They flinched. A full silent beat passed. "We've always supported you, Audrey," Dad said. "In different ways," Mom added quickly. "You were always the independent one. Jessica needed more, she struggled more." I took a long breath, steadying myself. "That's convenient," I said. "But it doesn't explain why you attended every one of Jessica's presentations, but skipped mine. Why you paid for her MCAT prep and told me to be resourceful. Why you covered her rent for 4 years while I was juggling part-time jobs and clinical rotations." My mother's eyes welled with tears. "That's not fair." "No," I said, calm but cold, "it's not." They stood frozen. For the first time in my life, they were speechless. Then salvation. My phone rang. Dr. Fleming. "Excuse me," I said, stepping away. "Hi, Dr. Fleming." "Yes, now's perfect." I turned my back on them as I answered the conversation about housing logistics and my fellowship beginning. Behind me, I felt their presence fade. For once, I didn't need them to understand. I had earned my worth. 3 weeks later, the apartment was almost empty. Boxes stacked, final items packed, walls bare. Jessica sat on the windowsill watching as I taped up a final box of books. "I still can't believe you're leaving next week," she said. "Baltimore won't know what hit it." I smiled. "Neither will you once you're doing triple overnight rotations in psych." She laughed, but then her face sobered. I've been thinking about what Mom and Dad did, or didn't do, I guess. For so long I thought I was lucky because they focused on me, but now I think they actually held me back. I sat beside her. You didn't do anything wrong, Jess. She shook her head. I didn't do enough right either. I should have spoken up years ago. I saw it. I just didn't know how to fix it. You did, I said quietly. That night, you fixed it. She gave a small smile. Mom keeps crying. Dad's telling everyone about his brilliant daughter at Johns Hopkins like he personally discovered you. I snorted. Let them talk. It doesn't matter anymore. Their approval, it used to feel like oxygen. Now it just feels like noise. She nodded slowly. So, what happens with us now? I reached over, took her hand. We find our own way, not the version of us they wrote, the one we write ourselves. Her grip tightened. I'd like that. Me too. Outside, the moving truck pulled up to the curb. Inside, I finally exhaled. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace. The morning I left Detroit, the sky was overcast, one of those soft gray clouds kind of days that felt more like a sigh than a storm. Jessica stood by the curb as the movers loaded the last of my boxes into the truck. She held a to-go coffee in one hand, my favorite order written neatly in Sharpie on the side, for Dr. Audrey Collins, world changer. I'm going to keep this in my office, she said, holding up a framed photo of the two of us at our med school white coat ceremony. For when patients ask if I have a superhero sibling, I smiled. Just tell them I'm the quiet one who works in the shadows. Batman of brain science, she teased. Something like that. The final box was sealed, the apartment echoing with the absence of everything familiar. Jessica walked me to my car. I keep thinking about how much time we lost, she said softly. Letting them define who we were to each other, letting them make you invisible so I could shine brighter. I don't want that anymore. I placed a hand on her shoulder. Neither do I, she blinked fast. Baltimore better know how lucky it is. You better text me before your first overnight rotation melts your soul. We hugged tight, real and unspoken. And then I got into my car. As I pulled away, I glanced once in the rearview mirror. Not at the building, at Jessica, at the version of her who finally saw me, at the version of me who had stopped waiting for our parents to. Baltimore was a blur at first, new city, new rhythms, a whirlwind of responsibilities that made medical school look like a dress rehearsal. But I flourished. The Patterson Fellowship was more than prestigious, it was liberating. I led early-stage research into regenerative pathways for pediatric brain trauma. I published 2 co-authored papers by the end of my second month. Dr. Fleming continued to mentor me long distance, and eventually I mentored others. I stopped looking over my shoulder, stopped comparing, stopped waiting, until one day in late fall I received a letter. It was from my parents. Inside were 2 things. A short handwritten note in my mother's delicate cursive. We're proud of you. We're sorry it took us this long to say it out loud. A birthday card from when I was 10, one I'd never seen. On the inside was a check long expired and a note that read, Jessica, we're so proud of our shining star. Love, Mom and Dad. They must have found it while cleaning out old files. Maybe they meant to show me. Maybe they wanted to apologize. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. Because for the first time, I didn't feel crushed by that kind of memory. I felt free from it. The following spring, Jessica came to visit me in Baltimore. We walked along the harbor, 2 doctors finally talking like sisters. She told me she'd taken on a new residency initiative, her idea, her leadership, no parental hand-holding. I told her about the new clinical trial I was leading. We laughed about our old arguments. We cried once briefly when we both realized how much we had missed in each other's lives. But mostly, we walked forward, together. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't a confrontation. It's a life fully lived without apology. It's finding your own light even when your family insists on standing in your shadow. And it's knowing deep down that you don't need anyone's permission to shine. Not anymore. Have you ever been the overlooked one in your family? Did you fight to be seen or choose to walk away and build your own life? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience, revelation, and redemption. You matter. Even if they never said it, you were never invisible.